Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. What is the secret to Jewish survival? Seriously, how does this even make sense? One of my YouTube viewers was criticizing me recently in an email, telling me that I have too much faith. And he's a rational scientist, he said. I asked him a simple question. I said, you're a Jew. You told me that you survived the Holocaust somehow, and you came to America, to Canada. He built himself a life, built himself a practice. How does this happen? How do you go from the bottom of the barrel to being a successful doctor in 2025? I mean, is that normal? What is the secret of Jewish survival? How do you explain a nation that has been on the brink of extinction more times than we can count? I mean, think of every inch of Europe, and you can identify some form of mass persecution, genocide. I mean, it's just so ironic that the nation that has been subject to extermination and genocide is the one being accused of that. It doesn't make sense. The very nations that have perpetrated those genocides against us are the ones that are accusing us. Let's just make a quick observation. So France is accusing Israel of colonialism, right? It's actually funny.
They're the biggest.
Just think about that. Just let's say that again slowly, right? France is accusing Israel of colonialism, together with, who else is joining them is Keir Starmer from England. Okay. So England and France and Spain are accusing Israel of colonialism. Let's do a very quick observation here. How many countries in the world speak English?
Most.
45 at least. How many countries in the world speak French? I think it's in the 30s, 37. How many countries in the world speak Spanish? Also in the 40s. So why do you think these countries speak French and Spanish and English? Is that just by mistake? No, it's because you colonized them. That's why they speak French and Spanish and English in those countries, right? How many countries in the world speak Hebrew?
One and a half.
Which half?
A quarter of America.
No. Which countries in the world speak Hebrew? There's one country in the whole world that speaks Hebrew, and that's Israel. What does that tell you? That is the antithesis of colonialism, which means the kettle is calling the frying pan the pot black, right? That's what's going on over here. They're accusing us of colonialism, which is their own faults, right? It doesn't make any sense. We have one country. Oh, one country's too much for you? So sorry that one country is too much for you to begrudge us to have. Well, guess what? We're not asking you. We're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. But how do you explain the miracle of Jewish survival against all odds? Think about it. We were at the brink of extinction in the Holocaust. The pogroms of the 18th century, the massacres of the Cossacks in Ukraine in the 17th century, the Second Crusade of the 13th century, the First Crusade of the 12th century, the Spanish expulsion. The Spanish expulsion, you know how crazy that was? All the Jews of Portugal were forced to convert. If you don't convert, we're going to kill you all. All the Jews of Spain were forced to flee, and if you don't convert to Christianity, we're going to kill you all. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's absolutely insane, and that's just in the past millennium. I just picked out, just a couple. In every country in Europe, Jews have been expelled in the past 1,000 years. Think about that. Jews have been kicked out. There's 300 and something years that Jews are not allowed to live in England. Talk about apartheid, right? Talk about apartheid. So they're telling us about apartheid. Jews were expelled from England until Oliver Cromwell managed to somehow stitch together some sort of a negotiation, which he didn't even see himself because he died before it came to fruition. But this is what's going on in the world around us, and we need to understand how that works. What we're about to learn today is Chassidus. Chassidus, this is actually a discourse of the previous Rebbe that we've started learning before the summer, and I'm going to go back into it now. Here's a picture of the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. This discourse was delivered by him in 1943 amidst the burning embers of the Holocaust, as Jews were struggling through the insane trials of having to go through the concentration camps, unthinkable, difficult times. And what we're doing today is understanding this discourse, which I just posted here to the online viewers. You can find the link there. We're in page 264 of this discourse, even though in the online version you won't really see it that way. We're kind of in chapter 2, where it starts with the word "an example." So if you go to chapter 2, an example in the book, it's page 264. And what we're going to learn today is why it is that the Jewish people respond to crisis with prayer. Which prayer specifically? It's chapter 20 of the book of Psalms of David. May the Lord, through the divine name of Havaya, answer you on the day of distress, and may the name of the God of Yaakov fortify you. Yaancha Beyom Tzara, Hashem Yaakov. Again, if you're in the book, we're on page 264. Okay, if you're in the online version, then we're in chapter 2, the paragraph that begins with the word "an example." So why is it that the Jews turn to God in this prayer? Is this just because we're helpless? Is it just because we're weak? Is it just because we're pathetic? The answer is no. The reason why we turn to God in this prayer is because this prayer actually holds the secret to Jewish survival. And as we've already learned in this discourse, if you've been with me through this discourse, that's great. If you haven't been with me, then I'll just catch you up right now. We learned that everything in this world falls into one of two categories. There's the natural order of events, and then there's the miraculous order of events. Now, it's not difficult to relate to the natural order of events. What's natural? Natural means, if you reap, you shall sow. You study hard for your test, then you get a good result. You train your soccer match skills, and you get chosen for the team. That's nature, right? Sunrise, sunset, childbirth, and death. Healing and illness. This is what we consider natural course of events. You get a cold, you get an allergy, you take a antihistamine, and the antihistamine might knock you out, but it's going to calm down your whatever, your reaction, allergy reaction. You got a headache, you take a Tylenol, and will numb the pain until it goes away, and so on and so forth. This is the natural order of events. But then you have the miraculous order of events. What's the miraculous order of events? The miraculous is when things happen that are completely unexpected. For example, when the doctor says that there's no hope for survival, and then you get a blessing from the Rebbe, you go to the Ohel, right? You write a letter to the Rebbe, and then there's a miraculous healing, and the doctor says it's a medical miracle, right? A miracle is when October 7th, we now are beginning to understand what was planned on October 7th. It was supposed to be a simultaneous invasion of Israel on 7 fronts. They were supposed to come in from Gaza, Hezbollah in the north, and Lebanon, rockets from Iran, Syria, and Iraq, and Yemen. There was even supposed to be some sort of infiltration of proxies of Iran through Jordan. It was supposed to have been a devastating, crushing blow in Israel, and nobody really knows to this day why it is that Sinwar pulled the trigger early, or the other ones maybe were afraid to jump on in the bandwagon. Hezbollah joined in on October 8th. That's when they started firing their rockets. Imagine they did it on the same day. What would have happened to Israel's armies, right? And civilians. So that would be a miracle where Israel was able to survive through October 7th. A miracle is when the Red Sea splits open. It's when God reveals the Torah on Mount Sinai. It's when the first plague of the firstborn happens. When 10 crushing plagues descend upon the Egyptians. When the oil burns for 8 days. Right? These are the miracles of Jewish history. Now, admittedly, the fact that the Jewish people are still around today is a miracle. So in other words, you don't have to only look into ancient history and say, well, in the olden days, we used to have miracles. No. If you look about it, it just doesn't make any sense that the Jewish people should be sitting around the table today, right here, and being able to celebrate life as Jews and to identify as Jews and to practice as Jews, speaking the very same language we spoke 3,000 and 4,000 years ago. The same names we had 4,000 years ago, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Right? The same land that we were in 4,000 years ago. The Americans can't say that. No European nation can say that. Only the Jews can say that, but again, we're colonialists, right? Right? It makes no sense. We're colonizing our own homes. So it's a miracle that the Jewish people are still around. So we actually are a modern day miracle. Now, when we get into the granular detail, we'll notice like this, that we can look around our own lives and actually notice the natural components of our lives and the miraculous components of our lives. Now, within our own lives, you'll notice more miracles. If you look at, for a moment, I want you to think about the size of your house right now. And I want you to think about the size of the house you grew up in. Okay? Think of your closet now, and think of the closet of your father or grandfather, right? And what's the difference? Huge, right? It's a huge difference. It's amazing how we've evolved. And think about your own financial journey, how you might have come from a family that barely spoke English, right? And you somehow made it through to create a career where you're able to live a life, hopefully that is stable and calm and peaceful and prosperous, right? So you might notice miracles within your own financial journey, miracles within your own romantic journey, miracles within your own parental journey, right? About the children that you had and the healing that they had and the relationships and the financials. You may notice all sorts of interesting small miracles throughout your life. Now, it is to these two modules, these two platforms of our lives, the natural and the miraculous, that we have two different names for God. One name for God that we're very familiar with is Elokim. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. Another name for God is the name that we're not allowed to even pronounce, and that's the name Havaya. The Yud, followed by the Hey, followed by the Yud. Followed by the Vav, and then followed by another Hey. So it's the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. We're not allowed to pronounce that word. We rearrange the letters to just pronounce it as Havaya, H-A-V-A. Y-A-H, right? Havaya. So we're going to talk about two names, Elokim and Havaya, right? Why does God have two names? What is it? Two bank accounts, two businesses? Like, why does God need to have two different names? And the reason is because it depends who you're talking to. The word Elokim, as we're about to learn, the word Elokim has the same mathematical value as the word nature in Hebrew. The word nature in Hebrew is hateva, and the name Elokim has the same numerical value because every letter in Hebrew is actually a number. So when you add up the value of the numbers of each letter, it actually adds to the same exact value. So the value of the name Elokim and the value of the name of the word nature in Hebrew is the same value because whenever you're speaking about Elokim, you're talking about God who's behaving in a natural order. Now, what does a natural order mean? We did learn this in a previous lesson in this series. The word nature in Hebrew is teva, which also means drowning. What's the connection between nature and drowning? The connection is when something is underneath the water, it's still there, it's just inconspicuous, you can't see it. So too, nature is when God hides himself from us. How does God hide himself from us? He hides himself through predictable patterns. Because he decided to make the sun rise every day, every morning, and set every evening. So we say, well, that's not God. We say that's nature. It's nature. What does that mean, nature? What is nature? Mother Nature, they'll tell you. Okay, so what's Mother Nature? What is Mother Nature? Is that a person? Is that a thing? What is that? It's God hiding himself in a predictable pattern. That's what it is. We just call it something that happens all by itself, as if things happen by themselves. Imagine you said that about your business. Yeah, I'm going to make money by itself. Said nobody ever, right? But the sun rises and sun sets, and babies are born and people die in a natural sequence of events, because that is just God's predictable patterns, how God hides himself. That is nature. The word nature, teva, which also means drowning, because drowning means hidden from the eye. So when God hides himself from us, he uses the name Elokim. And that's why when God created the world, which name does he use? Does he use for creation of the world? Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. In the beginning, Elokim created the heavens and the earth. Because when God created the world, he hid himself in the patterns of creation, in the patterns of the water cycle, and the patterns of osmosis and metamorphosis and photosynthesis and digestive systems and reproductive systems and all sorts of systems that God created into the world that we now take for granted. But in reality, it's God hiding himself. So when we talk about God who hides himself, we're using the name Elohim. When we're speaking about God, the way he makes miracles, the way that God, correct, X core 3, when God wants to be hidden, he doesn't want to be noticed, right? Why does he not want to be noticed, by the way? Why does he not want to do that? Why does he not want to do that? Because he wants to be hidden, because he wants to give us free choice, by the way. If God was obvious and clear and apparent in your business or in your family, if it was very clear that God was there all the time saving you from every trouble, then you wouldn't have free choice. You'd be like, okay, of course I have to worship God. But if God is hidden in this masterful disguise, then we're able to have a choice as to whether we want to serve him or not. On the converse, on the flip side, when God is revealing himself, when God is intervening within this world and causing miracles to happen, like splitting open the Red Sea, right? Or revealing himself on Mount Sinai, right? Or making the oil burn for 8 days, or surviving Israel through the 6-day war, or the Gulf War, or the October 7th war, or the attack on Iran, or and other miracles that happen all the time. That's when you'll be referring to the name Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And now we're starting to understand why we're using that prayer, which references which name of God? The name Havaya. If you look at the beginning of this discourse, you'll notice the prayer is Yaancha Havaya Beyom Tzara. May Havaya answer you in the day of distress. We're actually soliciting a miracle. When we say these words, when we are in trouble, when we are in distress, we're actually saying, listen, this is not a time for Elohim. This is a time for Havaya. We need Havaya. And how do we pronounce the word Havaya? We say, Yaancha Adonai Beyom Tzara. Yasigev Hashem Elihei Yaakov. We say Adoy and then Noy. That's how we pronounce the word, because it's too holy for us to utter. But what we're doing here, I just want to make sure we understand the purpose of the prayer is to solicit the miraculous and revealed power of God that is not subject to the laws of nature, that is not subject to the rules of this world, where we effectively can say that you can have a country that is 40 times the size of the state of Israel, which has malicious weapons and missiles and potential nuclear weapons, and to be able to say that a little country like Israel can defy the rules of logic and nature and projection and still overwhelm them, right? That is the miracle that we're soliciting by referring to the name of Havaya. Yes, Mark, you have a question?
Doesn't God reveal himself every day with the sun when the sun set in? Isn't that part of God?
So to the trained eye, yes. To the person that's aware that things don't happen by themselves, when you ask any normal businessman and you say, well, do you think you could create $1 billion business by itself? What's he going to tell you? Like, no. But then some people say, I don't know, maybe some unconscious people would say yes. I don't know. But I guess a lot of people think that billionaires didn't work too hard. I think a lot of people think that billionaires didn't work too hard. They're like, yeah, it just happened to them. When in reality, of course, they worked very, very hard, right? So to the untrained eye, Mark, I think that sunrise, sunset seems like just something that happens. They call it a phenomenon, which means something which is unexplainable, which makes no sense. Imagine you said about my business is unexplainable. I mean, you go bankrupt pretty quickly if you didn't understand every part of your business, right? But when it comes to the trained eye realizes that this is in fact the hidden hand of God. Let's look at this exact idea inside of the text on page 264. An example: every morning the sun is born in the east and then travels in a southwesterly direction until it sets in the west. We have grown so accustomed to the sun following its daily course that we deem its daily route to be the sun's nature. Because we are so used to this phenomenon, it does not elicit the response that an overtly supernatural event would. It's exactly what you just asked, right? Yet, pondering the fact that the sun has faithfully observed and followed this course for over 5,703 years. Remember, this discourse was delivered in 1943, right? Which would be 5,703 years since the creation of the world. Without any fundamental change, causes us to acknowledge that this is a supernatural phenomenon of the first rank. If you think for a moment, 1 second, it's been doing this for 5,703 years without ever one stopping. I mean, is there anything in the world that happens without stopping? Can you do anything without it going bad? For heaven's sake, I'm buying these LEDs that are for my house that are supposed to last 99 years. You heard about this? Biggest scam in 2025, 99 years. I think I'm getting 9 months out of them, you know, and they charge you 25 times the price. They're like, yeah, it's worth it because it's going to last you 100 years of light bulbs. Forget about it. It lasts me 9 months and I'm done. I need new ones, right? And then I can't even change the light bulb myself because it's got a whole screwy thing up there. So I got to get the electrician to come in and put it himself. Cost me another 10 times the amount, right? The old-fashioned light bulb, screwed in myself, right? So
Didn't God stop the sun?
yes, God stopped the sun. Good
when
point.
Joshua
Yeah.
and the tribes were
Very nice.
going into the Holy Land.
Yep, God stopped the sun in its tracks, and it was actually a very interesting.
So that was a miracle.
Absolutely, that was a miracle too. And in fact, if you study the astronomers, they speak about one lost day. The astronomers talk about how the cycles of the sun show that the sun is 24 hours off. You can Google it. It's called the lost day. There's like 24 hours off. It's like a little tiny incy-wincy bit off of the calculations. Like they can't understand. And one of the scientists who had studied some Bible said, well, you know, there's a Bible story that says that God stopped the sun for a day. So, you know, that's kind of interesting when you look up that story, right? So this would be considered by most people a natural event, which has nothing to do with God. But when you meditate upon it, when you reflect and ponder upon it, you realize this doesn't happen by itself. Nothing happens by itself forever. This is insanely, amazingly sophisticated. It's got to be powered by something higher. Remember, this is how Abraham discovered God, by the way. Abraham wanted to worship the sun and the moon and the stars, but he realized that it can't be that these just operate all by themselves. It's just not possible that that this happens by itself. There's got to be a higher power. This is how Abraham discovered the presence of God. And think about your own body for a second. You know how many things have to work in order for your body to function properly?
Yep.
There's like 6 million details that have to work properly in order for your body to work. I mean, you can't even buy a car that has every detail working properly, right? What human production is able to flawlessly replicate every single necessary system and detail countless times? You can't do this. You always got a lemon once in a while, you know, things breaking down and the warranties and everything else. When it comes to God creating humans, it's amazing. We're like these bags of air, and we have life in us, and lungs, and heartbeats, and arteries, and veins, and blood flow, and oxidization, and carbon dioxide out, and oxygen in. It's amazing what's going on in the human body. All the processes, and things that need to open, and things that need to close. It's amazing, right? So you can easily look at your body and say, well, I'm a scientist, and I believe in the power of nothing, that things just happen by themselves. Or you could be an enlightened person and say that this can't possibly happen by itself. Nothing in the world happened by itself. There's got to be a master engineer. There's got to be a designer that put this whole thing together. And that's what the prophet Habakkuk says. The prophet Habakkuk says, Mibsari echzaleka, from my flesh, I see godliness. From my flesh, I see godliness. I see, when I look in my hand, you just need to look at your hand and you realize that there's got to be a soul in here that's giving it life. There's got to be some sort of directive right now. Just like when it comes to the sunrise and sunset, just like when it comes to the functioning of the human body, that there's two ways to perceive it, that you can look at it either from a perspective of natural, or you can see the miracle within it. The same is true regarding all natural matters. They are natural only because of their regular recurrence. That is the reason why they look natural, because they keep on repeating themselves according to predictable patterns. Indeed, there's only one difference. This is very beautiful now. There's only one difference between nature and the supernatural. It is that the divine light, which creates and vivifies the spirits of souls and angels, cannot be comprehended at all. Not only can their essence not be apprehended, but it is impossible to conceptualize even their spiritual condition. Yet God gave man the ability to appreciate some material parts of creation. This in turn enables us to make an educated guess about the divine light that is higher than nature. For it was the divine intent that the light be concealed within those entities that are nearer to physical man, in order to let us have an inkling of that which is beyond us. So God gives us like a little teaser. Most of the human experience is God's predictable patterns of nature, but we get a little teaser of God's miraculous way of operating. We get like these miracles once in a while, and we say, oh, I guess there is a God, but we weren't supposed to have access to those. This then is the true meaning of nature in Hebrew teva. It's a divine light that is girded by habitual recurrence. Very important to understand that the definition of nature is habitual recurrence. Just as the water of the sea surrounds and conceals that which is found in its depths, so when the water hides that which is buried in the water, the word for nature is the same word as drowning, right? So just like the water hides that which is in it, nature hides the hand of God behind a masquerade of that which seems predictable and that which seems to naturally recur by recurring patterns. Now, if this is true of all of creation, where there's a natural and there's a supernatural order, and that it's Elohim that manages the natural order, and it's Havaya that manages the supernatural order. When it comes to the Jews, we aren't going to have time for this today, but I'm just going to give you a teaser, heads up, that when it comes to the Jews are different. When it comes to the Jews, not only does the miraculous parts of the life of a Jew governed by the miracles of Havaya, but even the natural components of the Jews' existence is governed by Havaya as well. Why? Because the entirety of the existence of the Jew is miraculous. Let me give you a quick example. How many billionaires are there who are the most, I think the most generous billionaires of America in the past couple years? Actually, not all Jews. I think, and exactly, that's the key word.
50% of the
Right.
major donations
Right.
are Jewish,
Right.
and we're 2% of the country.
Right. 3%, I think, no? 3%?
A little over 2.
Is it 2%? So, 6 million Jews. So, if you think about it this way, that I think there was, let's say the 25 most generous philanthropists in America 2 or 3 years ago. I think most of them were Gentiles, but 40-something% were Jews, which is insane.
That's a crazy
For a
percent.
2% of the population to be 40-something% of the philanthropists makes no sense. It really, maybe it's 50, but the key word being a disproportionate. That's the key word, right? When you think about the survival of the Jewish people, despite the animus of our enemies, I mean, how many nations have tried to wipe us out? It's mind-boggling. And the fact that we've actually managed to survive, that itself is miraculous, right? Think about how think about how I mean, when you study Judaism, when you study Jewish people, you realize the miracle. I think Mark Twain referenced it in the end of one of his books. He said, there's no explanation as to why the other massive civilizations and empires have come and gone, and only the Jew outlives them all. There's no explanation. It doesn't make any sense, right? The Jew is truly an anomaly of existence, and that, says this mimer here, is because not only does the miraculous component of the life of a Jew depend on miracles, but even the ordinary mundane life of a Jew is also governed by the miraculous. And that's why whenever we're in trouble, whenever we're struggling, you're supposed to turn to the Psalms of King David. And now I know some people will say, well, I don't understand the Psalms of King David. They make no sense to me, right? Says the shallow perception reader, right? You have to understand that the depth in the Psalms of King David are very, very deep. They're extremely deep. And today we've touched on just one tiny meditation, which is literally one word in Psalms chapter 20. When we said, answer us, O Havaya, on the day of our distress, what you're saying is, I recognize, Hashem, that all of my existence depends on you. That's what we're effectively saying by saying those words. And what do you think happens when the Jew has the faith to say to God, I know that my life depends on you.
If
Let's finish this question. What happens when the Jew has the faith to say, my life depends on you, God? That is an invitation for God to, in fact, swoop in and to actually save him in the time of his distress.
If everything in reality is a miracle, then why do we have a choice between Havaya and Elohim? If Havaya means miracle and everything in life is a miracle.
Isn't that interesting? That Elohim now becomes low-level faith, right? Elohim is like, if you only believe in God, that's not enough. Now you got to believe in God's miraculous operating in every single detail of your life. It's in. Look, I'll tell you the way the philosophers of history say it is like this. The philosophers of history say like this: that for a person to not believe in God, he's a fool. That's what the ancient philosophers say. For a human being to deny the existence of God, he's simply being a fool. Because just like if I told you that my car made itself, you would think I'm out of my mind, right?
Right.
Or my house built itself, you'd think I'm out of my mind. Or that this book wrote itself, you'd think I'm out of my mind. Why would you think that a world can make itself and not think that you're out of your mind? It's actually much worse, because if a little book needs to have an author, how much more so does a gargantuan universe that we still have not been able to comprehend? How could that possibly happen by itself? So it's very important to understand this, that to be an atheist means to be an idiot. Forgive me for being so blunt, because what you're essentially doing by being an atheist is that you're being irrational. You're being unscientific. Science says every effect must have a prior cause. Yet you're going to say, I'm a scientist and I only believe in what I see, and therefore, since I can't see the cause that came before this world, therefore there is none. I mean, that's such a stupid conclusion to come to. It just doesn't make any sense to come to such a conclusion, right? So the baseline, Chuck, the baseline is that there's belief in God. There must be belief in God, even for the least faithful. You got to believe in God. The question is, which degree of God, which platform, which modality are you connecting with? Are you connecting with a modality where God has given us more autonomy because he's choosing to remain anonymous, and therefore my relationship with God is a little more distant, a relationship which is Elohim, where God is hiding from me? Or, as the Jewish survival insists, that our relationship with God is a clear and open and indisputable miracle, where we recognize that God is absolutely present in every single detail of my life. And just like the television would be unable to produce any image, if not that it was plugged into the wall with the electricity flowing through the cables at all moments in time, so too my life would simply not be able to exist if not for the doctrine of perpetual creation, if not for God constantly and miraculously and at every single moment creating me and infusing me with life and protecting me. We'll learn more about this as we proceed, but it definitely shifts our perception to realize how fortunate we are to have been chosen to be the apple of God's eye. We are his focal point. The question is he our focal point? But when we make the choice to choose to make God the center of our lives, to turn to him in time of distress, that is the greatest invitation for which he is waiting in order to swoop in and save us in the time of our distress. Yes, Keith?
Something called Pascal's wager.
Yeah, we discussed it.
No, we didn't.
What is that?
Pascal's wager is based on the matrix. Pascal argued that the only rational choice is to wager on God's existence, as it offers the possibility of infinite gain and minimal risk.
So Pascal's wager is to say that your best option is to believe in God. Why? Because it's the most rational choice?
Yeah, well,
there's no downside.
Or
If you don't believe in God and there is a God, you're subject to damnation.
Okay, so he's saying that it's better for business. French philosopher, mathematician, and physicist Blaise Pascal, 1623 to 1622, seems like he had a negative 1 year lifespan, proposed a pragmatic argument that is, you can never believe AI, by the way, proposed a pragmatic argument that is in one's own best interest to believe in God. He says, if you do not believe in God and he does not exist, then you lose nothing. But if you don't believe in God and he does exist, then you suffer eternal loss. I'll say it's very simple. You don't need Blaise Pascal for this. You can say very simple. If you have a choice to say, this effect either has a cause that I don't understand, or this effect has no cause and it just is. I mean, you got to be a fool to believe the second one.
No, but Pascal's point was, by you saying it, doesn't, it's your blind faith, and people don't necessarily believe in it. What Pascal tried to do is break it down into a mathematical equation and odds, saying that you can't just say somebody's a fool, an idiot, for not believing.
Why not?
Because you can't say that.
Why not? I said it.
You're not going to convince anybody of that.
Why not?
You know what? Go talk to anybody who supports Trump or who's against Trump. That's their argument. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. That doesn't.
It's irrational. Is it okay to say irrational?
No.
It's not okay to say it's irrational?
No.
Can't say it's irrational.
Pascal said, broke it down and said, look, here are the odds. So if you're at Las Vegas, you're at the casino, you have to place a bet. You want to place a bet where you have the greatest odds. So Pascal says the greatest odds are believing in God. And this is why. Because there's no downside to believing in him, but there is a downside.
Look, I have to tell you, I think it's a very weak argument. I mean, it's a good argument, but it's better than nothing.
But it's a lot better than the one you say, where you just say, you don't believe in God, you're an idiot.
Okay, so let me reframe. Let me just reframe your argument. Let me just reframe your Blaise Pascal thing. Okay, so if I've got a choice to think that my house was built by immaculate construction. No, sorry, immaculate conception, by itself, right? If I have a choice to believe that my house is either built, or this building was built either by itself, or it was built by an architect and a builder, I'm going to say odds are you're better off to believe that there was actually a contractor, because what do you have to lose? What kind of argument is that? You got a choice between stupidity and rational thinking, and you're better off thinking rational thinking.
I think it's.
You agree with me? He agrees.
I agree with
Would
that.
you rather have? Would you rather build a house using a contractor or using someone who's not? Well, you put your odds on the contractor.
Rabbi, I think it's your choice of words.
Yeah,
The difference between
semantics.
somebody being irrational and somebody being an idiot. That's
Right. When you're well, yeah.
I know, because you're hurting their feelings. I'm sorry. Okay, fine.
Name calling.
Sorry. DEI. Okay.
Going back to the numbers
No,
before I looked, it's
There's no substance to that argument.
2% of the population, with the top 25% of the 25 donors in this country, 48% are Jewish.
Fine. So we're close enough.
Close to
So-
50%.
so,
And as a whole, Jews donate 12% of the donations.
12% of all donations in America. Wow. Chuck.
They would expect them to give a lot more to Jewish causes.
Chuck, is it offensive to call an atheist irrational?
It's not offensive.
I believe in God.
It's a
But if I
stupid
don't-
argument because you're convincing nobody. That's like writing a book without any substance.
Okay, you go to court.
Who's gonna
and you
believe
say,
you?
say, well, he's
That's
stupid,
called a
he's an
novel.
idiot for not
You don't
believing
want
him. You gotta show facts.
You
You
gotta
gotta show
show-
proof.
Fact.
Yeah, but you don't use.
You're
that.
telling me-
You
It's
gotta
just the
show-
semantics.
Yeah,
clean
yeah,
out.
some-
No, I understand. You don't like the word.
The argument court has to be, you don't call somebody an idiot, you say, listen, the odds of this happening are better that there's a God than just telling the person he's an idiot.
But if it, but
Okay,
if
I'm
you
going to take back the word idiot, okay? And I'm going to say it's
It
unscientific.
doesn't make sense.
It's unscientific to be an atheist. Is that
The
fair?
old line, there are no atheists in Fox.
Is that fair?
That's right.
Fine. So that's what I'm going to say. And you can't tell me that if you have a choice of a rational argument versus an irrational argument, that the reason you should choose the rational argument is because odds are better.
yeah, that's
No.
It's the
You
choice
choose the rational argument.
between wisdom and folly.
It's rational.
No, you pick the rational argument because that increases your chances of convincing somebody else. You're talking to 76,000 people. Give them a reason. Don't just say if you don't do it, you're an idiot.
Got to provoke them.
Well, the
But,
reason,
Yeah,
Rob, the reason
You need,
is
you
that
need drama to
everything.
create.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like when you call them
Wait,
in.
it's semantics, and you call somebody an idiot, they're not listening to
They
you.
shut me down. I
Well,
know.
like,
They
become
put a.
offensive and
So
they start figuring
semantics,
while they're not an
that's
idiot.
what, it's better to say and than but.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to take back anything I said to hurt the feelings of any atheists over here. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to replace any word that I said which was
We have no-
hurting feelings. If I say the word idiot, then I should say I'm replacing that with the word unscientific and irrational. Okay?
That's good.
Okay? So hopefully they'll watch till this point to be able to recognize, and they won't shut me off already then.
Yeah.
Because if they're being rational, then they might want to hear the argument through to the end. But you never know.
Right.
Anyways, folks, thank you very much. Have a great day. Shalom.